This video is sponsored by FIDE, a Catholic technology alternative to big tech companies. FIDE provides email, calendar services, file, and collaborative options, forums for individuals, families, businesses, parishes, and nonprofit operations. Check out the link in the description box for more information. By now you've heard the rumor, almost certainly anyway, I hope you've heard the rumor, that at some point in the near future, Rome is going to issue a new document functionally banning the Latin Mass, at least outside of the FSSP and the Institute of Christ the King, and of course outside the SSPX, who aren't being affected in any way by these, except with the overflow of new followers that they get because of Rome's overreach. You've probably heard this story, and I'm going to classify it for now as a rumor because, by definition, a rumor is something that is a report essentially that you get from reliable sources generally, but can't be verified. Thus is the nature of a rumor, and it won't be verified till it happens. However, when it comes to Latin Mass bannings, we've had a pretty good track record of them being accurate in the last couple of years in the lead up to Traditionis Custodes, which was issued on the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, July of 2021. Now, the new rumor is that it's going to be a new document's going to come ending the whole thing. And I'd been sitting on this story for a while because I had a feeling the other shoe was going to drop, and it sort of did. So this isn't as clear as it should be. I'm not validating the rumor. I'm going to give you essentially both sides. And the best reporting on this comes from, in terms of this is going to happen rumor side of things, comes from Robert Moynihan, who is sort of endorsing the German reporting on this, originally from a website called summorum-pontificum.de. He provides a great English translation on his website, insidethevatican.com. And I will put links to this and the other report, the counter-argument, I guess, in my show notes today at returntotradition.org, which you can see in my little name tag thing on the screen. Just go to that website, and if it's not there when this goes live, please let me know. I'll fix it. Anyway, let's get right to this. Let's start with Robert Moynihan's translation at insidethevatican.com. Bang or rumor from summorum-pontificum.de, which came out on January 13th, 2023, almost a week ago. The Roman jungle telegraph, to which we are connected via several links, does not always work reliably, which is why we usually hold back a little with a public reproduction of the messages received from it. Not everything is worth sharing. The fact that Arthur Roach, the head of the authority responsible for the liturgy, reacted to the news of Benedict's death with the words, "Now we can finally sign the document," seemed to us at best to be of anecdotal interest. Mr. Moynihan's note here. So this report takes for granted that Archbishop Roach did actually make such a remark as, "Now we can finally sign the document," after learning of Benedict's death, but it did not consider the remark of much importance or interest, at best of anecdotal interest. In the next sentence, however, this source speaks of receiving, quote, "news of the, quote, form and content of an actual document." So this report is not based just on extrapolation from an alleged chance remark of Archbishop Roach, but on additional, quote unquote, reports. Continuing with the original report now. News is now reaching us about the form and content of this document, and it sets off all the alarm bells. It concerns a new apostolic constitution, with which Francis, who is extremely dissatisfied with the slow implementation of Traditionis Custodes, finally wants to put an end to the Old Mass. Francis chose the form of an apostolic constitution in order to align himself with the corresponding constitution Missale Romanum of Paul VI, and emphasize the parity of its current regulations with the 1969 Act. Note from Mr. Moynihan. So this source is claiming that there is in the works in Rome an apostolic constitution, which would put an end to the Old Mass. This is why other Catholics reading this report become agitated. The German site continues by sketching the alleged contents of the alleged constitution. Back to the original report. According to our information, the expected constitution contains 4 main decrees. In no diocesan church may the Old Mass be celebrated. Note, the key word here is only. In other words, the supposed decree would seemingly forbid any Catholic church to be exclusively devoted to the Old Liturgy. In every Catholic church, this alleged decree would require the Novus Ordo liturgy to be celebrated as well as the Old Liturgy. Second point, in ? Diocesan churches, It is not allowed to celebrate every Sunday in the old rite. The use of the 1962 books with the modifications ordered by Francis, presumably this refers to some of the newer saints added to the 1962 Order of the Saints, is permitted only for the celebration of Mass, not for the administration of sacraments and sacramentals. Every priest is obliged to publicly celebrate Mass according to the Missal of Paul VI. Note the article then concludes as follows. This is the status of our information as of January 13th. We'll keep an eye on things and an ear to the telegraph. All right, before we get to the further report on this, that sounds pretty bad. It does mean that you will still have some Latin Mass offerings happening. However, being an apostolic constitution really ties the hands of the bishops. You will never see a bishop forbidding, say, the new Mass, the Mass of Paul VI, the Novus Ordo, short of a act by Rome, rescinding that Mass, probably with an apostolic constitution. Why? Because an apostolic constitution is much more binding than a motu proprio is. We'll let the canonists explain that more as they begin analyzing these things, especially if and when this document comes out. Now, the second report Mr. Moynihan gives us comes from mediaspress.info, which is a French website, and it was published the next day. Their article was called "Taking Advantage of the Death of Benedict XVI. Francis Wants to Complete His Destructive Work." Again, biased source. It essentially repeats what the German article said, but it also makes sure that you understand this is on the context of Benedict dying. They're taking advantage of the situation. And then you get a third report. Marco Tossadio at Stilium Cure, who I cite very often, gives a translation of the French article. Now, this gets to the next part. Rorate Caeli published this recently. Their source in Rome, presumably the same one who told them incorrectly that a particularly nasty cardinal was going to be made the prefect for the dicastery of the doctrine of the faith, and that turned out not to be true. Presumably that same source has said this isn't true. Here is their report on it. For fairness' sake, even though you can tell that I'm a little biased against the Rorate Caeli report, even though I appreciate the work Rorate Caeli does. They do great work in this space. Please do not misunderstand what I'm saying. Anyway, the Rorate Caeli report. So their headline is, "So about that rumor." Regarding the rumor of a new document on the Latin Mass, a rumor that was widespread last week, our sources in Rome have denied its existence, or at least that it is planned. One important caveat, however, and this is our own, not from our sources. This pontificate has seen a plethora of new legislation coming out every month. And differently from what used to happen in the past, the legislation enacted by Francis does not derive from a measured procedure, in which each congregation concerned is asked for feedback and considerations. In Francis law, there is no procedure. The clique around the Pope selects ready-made projects from any loud ecclesiastical lobbyist that will find a favorable audience in that Jesuit circle. And if it is favored by those who in turn are favored by Francis, it has a great chance of becoming law. This is what happened with Traditionis Custodes. It is bad law, badly written, and filled with grotesque language because it was authored mostly by a liturgical dilettante, Andrea Grillo, whose only personal qualification is his hatred for the traditional Mass. It was placed before Francis by his entourage, he accepted and decreed it. It is all very bizarre. In a system as the papacy, in which the sovereign is executive, legislator, and judge, the limits to his power are the procedural guidelines developed over the centuries. When these are ignored, all bets are off, and the very legitimacy of the institution comes undone. Each new month of the Francis pontificate is a month of growing illegitimacy due to the collapse of institutional bulwarks, protecting the rights, duties, and prerogatives of all, from bishops and cardinals to the laity. This is all to say that the rumor may not be completely true, but not that something like it is impossible. One simply never knows what is going on, or who is being currently favored by the clique. So there you have it, folks. Now I'm going to remind you, we have competing rumors here. Again, these are rumors. I tend to think that Mr. Moynihan is right, that this document is coming. So I'm going to ask you, when do you think it's coming? And I say that because they have, meaning the modernists in Rome, the apostate modernists in Rome who hate the faith, have this tendency of releasing such documents on major Marian feast days. I have a whole video on how most, if not all, the Pachamama stuff was done on either major feast days, major saints' feast days, like the Feast of St. Francis of Assisi, or on Marian days. Traditionis Custodes was issued on the Feast of Our Lady of Mount Carmel in July of 2021. When do you think this is going to happen? My patrons had the original version of this video, which was shorter, and I suggested Ash Wednesday. But it occurs to me that because of a comment someone gave me on that video, that actually it's more likely that you'll see this on the Feast of the Annunciation, the day that we celebrate the incarnation of our blessed Lord Jesus Christ. It's a Marian day, and it's a feast day specifically honoring our Lord and their inseparable relationship. That would be spookily appropriate for them to do this, because we are talking about people who at the end of the day hate the Catholic faith as it was before the council and the revolution in the church that followed, which are embodied by the maniacs in Rome. Either of those days would work, but what other feast days could you see it happening in? Let me know in the comments. Again, I tend to think that Mr. Moynihan is right and that Rorate Caeli's source is incorrect, but I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. None of us wants to see more restrictions on the traditional liturgy. None of us do. But that's probably not the case. But for now, this is a rumor because we can't verify it. By definition, if you can't verify something, it becomes a rumor. And I hesitated to do this without bringing you both sides. Let me know in the comments if you think Rorate Caeli is right, that the modernists wouldn't dare do this, or if you think Mr. Moynihan, I think Taylor Marshall reported on this, I'm pretty sure LifeSite reported on this, pretty much everybody reported on this except me, because I was holding back because I've become too concerned about the veracity of rumors from Rome to be willing to go out on a limb on these things, because I don't like spreading bad information to people. Let me know in the comments what you think. Like and subscribe if you haven't. It does help. Sharing this on social media helps a lot too. Thanks to the patrons of this channel for your patience in getting you this video, a second version of this video early, but also for your continued support in 2023. It is greatly appreciated. And as always, pray for the church. I'm Anthony Stine. Ave Maria.